The blade touched cold against Garrett Maddox's throat and he smiled. Not the smile of a frightened man, not the nervous twitch of someone staring down their executioner. This was something else entirely. Something that had earned him a nickname whispered in dark rooms across 3 continents. Dead Man's Grin. "You're finally here, Cat Sterling," he said into the darkness of the abandoned lumber mill. His voice carried no fear, only a quiet satisfaction that made the woman holding the knife pause. "Took you long enough." The blade pressed harder. A single drop of warmth traced down his neck, disappearing beneath his collar. Around them, the ancient machinery of the Olympic Peninsula mill groaned in the wind. Rusted conveyor belts hung like skeletal fingers from the rafters. Moonlight filtered through gaps in the corrugated roof, painting silver stripes across concrete floors that hadn't seen a log in 20 years. 15 years, Maddox. Her voice was steady, controlled. The voice of someone who'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in the mirror. 9 hunters dead before me. Did you count them? Did you remember their names? Garrett's smile widened, the kind of expression that didn't reach his eyes because his eyes had stopped participating in smiles decades ago. At 63, with silver threading through close-cropped hair and scars mapping a life of violence across skin that had forgotten softness, he looked exactly like what he was. A man who'd walked through hell so many times he'd stopped noticing the heat. 9 are dead, he confirmed, each word measured and deliberate. "You're next." The confidence in that statement should have been impossible. Should have been the bravado of a cornered animal trying to bluff its way to survival. But something in the way he said it, in the absolute certainty that filled those 3 syllables, made Cat Sterling's grip on the knife falter. "Just for a moment. Just enough. I've been watching you watch me, Cat." Garrett kept his hands visible, palms open at his sides. No sudden movements, no aggressive postures. Just a man having a conversation with someone who'd spent 15 years dreaming of this exact moment. "Wondered when you'd finally be good enough to find me." "Good enough." The words came out sharp, angry. "I've tracked you across 12 states, through 4 identities, past security systems that would stop a ghost. Don't tell me about good enough. And yet here we are." Garrett tilted his head slightly, the blade following the movement. "In a place I chose. At a time I chose. With you holding a knife to my throat because I allowed it." He paused, let that sink in. "Tell me, Cat, does that feel like you found me, or does it feel like I let you catch up?" The lumber mill creaked. Wind whistled through broken windows, carrying the smell of rotting wood and Pacific rain. Somewhere in the darkness, water dripped with metronomic precision. Drip, 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 like a clock counting down to violence. Cat Sterling was 35 years old, and she'd spent more than a third of her life hunting the man in front of her. She'd learned 17 languages to track his movements, mastered 6 different combat systems to match his skills, studied psychology, interrogation techniques, tactical analysis. Everything she'd become had been shaped by one singular purpose: kill the man who murdered her sister. But now, with the knife at his throat and his blood on her blade, something felt wrong, off, like a puzzle piece that almost fit but left tiny gaps at the edges. "Blackwood Station," she said, forcing her voice to stay level. 15 years ago, you detonated the reactor core, killed 200 people. Medical staff, maintenance workers, security personnel who were just doing their jobs." The knife trembled slightly. "My sister Sarah was a research scientist, 22 years old. She wanted to save lives. She was developing medical countermeasures. Blackwood was a bioweapon facility." Garrett's voice carried no apology, no regret, just cold statement of fact. "They were engineering a plague to deploy against civilian populations. I had 8 hours to stop them before the weapon reached operational status. I made a choice that killed my sister. Yes, no deflection, no justification, just acknowledgement of the truth, stark and unforgiving as winter stone." "She had nothing to do with their weapons," Kat continued. "She was trying to help people, trying to heal. She was innocent." "Probably." Garrett met her eyes in the darkness. His were gray flat like stagnant water over deep wells. "I never had time to sort innocent from guilty. That's the thing about warfare, Kat. The clock doesn't stop because you want to check everyone's background. So you just killed them all. I stopped a plague that would have killed millions." He shifted his weight slightly, testing her reaction. She tensed but didn't strike. Your sister was collateral damage I regret, but I'd make the same choice tomorrow, and the day after, and every day for the rest of my life. The honesty of it hit harder than any lie could have. No pleading, no begging for understanding or forgiveness. Just a man who'd made an impossible choice and learned to live with the cost. Kat's jaw tightened. 15 years. 15 years of hate, of planning, of dreaming about this moment. And now that she had it, the man wouldn't even give her the satisfaction of making excuses. The consortium told me you were a monster, she said quietly. A war criminal who enjoyed killing, who laughed while people burned. The consortium lies. Garrett's tone didn't change. Still calm, still matter of fact. It's what they do. It's all they do. Every word from their mouths is calculated to serve their interests. He paused. Before you finish this, before you drive that blade home, answer me one question. Why should I? Because you've spent 15 years hunting me. A few more seconds won't matter. Silence stretched between them. The mill groaned, water dripped, and finally Kat nodded. Once. Sharp. Why did the consortium stop paying you 8 years ago? The knife didn't move, but something changed in Kat's posture. A subtle shift like bedrock settling beneath a foundation. How do you know that? Her voice was barely above a whisper. Garrett's expression softened slightly. Because I've been tracking them through you. Every move you made, every lead you followed, every time you got close, I knew. Because they wanted you to get close. They wanted you hunting me instead of hunting them. Slowly, carefully, he reached into his jacket. Kat tensed the knife, biting deeper, drawing another thin line of red. But Garrett's hand emerged holding only a battered tablet. Old model, cracked screen. The kind of tech someone used when they didn't want to be traced. May I? He gestured with the device. Kat considered. Calculated odds, angles of attack, ways this could go wrong. Then she nodded again, stepping back slightly, but keeping the blade ready. Poised, lethal. Garrett activated the tablet. Blue light washed across his weathered features as he scrolled through files. Then he turned the screen toward her. 9 assassins before you, he said. The consortium sent all 9. Want to know what happened to them? The screen showed photographs, documents, financial records. Each file meticulously organized, cataloged with the precision of someone who'd spent a lifetime in intelligence work. First file, Marcus Webb, status alive, location classified, new identity established under federal witness protection. Second file, Jennifer Chen, status alive, location classified, currently working as trauma counselor in Minneapolis under assumed name. Third file, David Kowalski, status alive, location classified, relocated to Fishing Village in Maine. 3 of them took my offer, Garrett explained. New lives, new identities, names I'll never speak, locations I'll never reveal. They chose to walk away. He scrolled down. The next 6 files made Kat's blood run cold. Status deceased, cause combat engagement. Location buried Olympic Peninsula wilderness. Status deceased, cause combat engagement. Location buried Cascade Mountain Range. Status deceased, cause combat engagement. Location buried Montana Badlands. All 6, same story. Chose to fight, chose to kill, and paid the price. I gave each of them the same choice I'm giving you, Garrett continued. Walk away, live, build something better than what the consortium made you into. His gray eyes found hers again. Or fight and join the others in the ground. Kat's hand shook. Not much, just enough to make the blade waver against his skin. This could be fabricated, she managed. Photoshopped. Fake. It could be. Garrett didn't argue the point. But you've been hunting me for 15 years, Kat. In all that time, in every encounter, every near miss, every moment when our paths almost crossed, answer me this. He leaned forward slightly into the blade. Have I ever struck first? Have I ever killed anyone who wasn't actively trying to end my life? The question hung in the air like smoke from a dying fire. Kat thought back. 15 years of investigation. 15 years of piecing together Garrett Maddox's movements, his actions, his pattern of behavior. Every witness statement, every after-action report, every shred of evidence she'd compiled in her obsessive pursuit. And the terrible truth was, she couldn't find a single exception. Every kill attributed to Garrett Maddox had been defensive. Every death had come after someone else drew first blood. He'd never hunted, never initiated, never struck from the shadows like the monster the consortium had painted him to be. He'd only ever survived. "You tracked me to Meridian Point," Garrett said softly, reading the realization in her eyes. "3 years ago, I was living as a contractor, building houses, had a small place outside town, neighbors who invited me to barbecues, a life. I remember." Kat's voice was hollow. "You disappeared 2 days before I arrived. Because I knew you were coming." He gestured to the tablet. "I have surveillance feeds. Watch it you scope the town. Watch it you interview my neighbors. Watch it you search my house after I'd cleared out." A pause. "And I knew that if I stayed innocent, people might get caught in whatever came next. So you ran. So I left." The distinction mattered to him. "I've learned that lesson before, Kat. Learned it at a place called Cartwright Camp. Learned it when the consortium captured me and spent 6 months teaching me what happens to people who get in their way." His jaw tightened. "I won't be the reason more innocent people die. Not again. Not ever." The blade withdrew. Not much. Just an inch. But in the language of violence, that inch represented a chasm. Kat Sterling stared at the man she'd spent half her life hating. Really looked at him for the first time. Saw the scars that covered his forearms. The burn marks that disappeared under his collar. The way he held himself like every movement caused pain he'd learned to ignore decades ago. This wasn't the monster from her nightmares. This was something worse. A human being. "Why?" The word came out broken. "Why tell me all this? Why not just kill me when you had the chance?" Garrett's expression turned gentle. "Because you're the best hunter the consortium ever made, and I need the best to stop what's coming." He activated the tablet again. New files appeared. Intelligence reports, surveillance photos, financial transactions, a web of data that painted a picture of something vast and terrible. "The consortium is planning something called Cascade Protocol," Garrett explained. "Simultaneous strikes on 50 militia strongholds across rural America. Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Alaska. Places where people still believe in independence, in self-reliance, in the idea that government should fear the people, not the other way around." He zoomed in on specific locations. Small towns, isolated communities, places where people knew their neighbors and didn't lock their doors at night. "They're going to frame it as domestic terrorism," he continued. "Make it look like coordinated attacks by extremist groups. Then use the fear, the chaos, the blood to justify martial law. Federal takeover of local governments. Confiscation of weapons. Suspension of constitutional rights." His voice went flat. "Everything the founders warned us about. Everything people like your father spent their lives preparing to resist." Kat's eyes snapped to his. "How do you know about my father?" "Because the consortium killed him 6 months ago." Garrett's words landed like hammer blows. "Him and your 3 brothers. Burned your family's compound in Montana. Made it look like an accidental fire. Electrical malfunction, faulty wiring, no investigation, no questions asked." The world tilted. Kat felt the floor shift beneath her feet, felt gravity lose its certainty. "You're lying." "I wish I was." Garrett pulled up more files, news reports, fire marshal investigations, death certificates, official documents stamped with government seals that declared the Sterling family tragedy an accident. "They killed everyone you were sending money to, Kat, everyone you were fighting for, and they did it while you were halfway across the country hunting me." Kat's vision blurred, not tears. She'd forgotten how to cry years ago. But something in her chest cracked. Something that had been holding her together since she was 20 years old and they told her Sarah was dead. "Why?" The word barely made it past her lips. "Why kill them? They weren't a threat. They were just survivalists, preppers. They wanted to be left alone. Because you were getting too good." Garrett's voice was gentle now, almost kind. "You were asking too many questions, following too many threads, getting close to people who actually knew the truth about Blackwood, about what really happened there." He paused. The consortium doesn't leave loose ends, and family makes the best leverage, or the best message. The knife slipped from Kat's fingers, clattered on concrete with a sound like breaking glass. 15 years. 15 years of hate, of purpose, of singular focus on the man who had killed Sarah. And all of it, every moment, every sacrifice had been a lie, a distraction, a magic trick, where the consortium waved Garrett Maddox in her face while they murdered everyone she loved behind her back. "I spent 8 years hunting you for free," she whispered. 8 years after they stopped paying me, while they were planning to kill my family, while they were setting up whatever the hell Cascade Protocol is. She looked up at him. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because you weren't ready." Garrett crouched down, bringing himself to eye level. "You needed to be good enough to survive what comes next. Needed to be hard enough, skilled enough, angry enough." He held her gaze. "The consortium made you into a weapon, Cat. Aimed you at me and pulled the trigger. But weapons can be reloaded, retargeted, aimed at the people who forged them in the first place. You want me to help you? I want you to choose." He gestured to the knife on the floor. "Pick that up. Drive it through my heart. Walk away knowing the man who killed Sarah is dead. Take your revenge." His voice dropped. "Or help me stop the people who've been using you for 15 years, who killed your father and brothers, who are planning to kill thousands more. Make your sister's death mean something." Silence filled the lumber mill. Deep, heavy, pregnant with the weight of futures branching in different directions. Kat stared at the knife, then at Garrett, then back to the knife. "If I help you," she said slowly, "it doesn't mean I forgive you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. It doesn't mean we're friends. Wouldn't expect it. And if I find out you're lying, if any of this is deception, if you're playing me the way they played me," her voice went cold, hard, sharp as the blade on the floor, "I will kill you slowly. I will make it hurt. And I will enjoy every second." Garrett nodded once. "I'd expect nothing less." Kat reached down. Her fingers closed around the knife handle. For a moment, just a heartbeat, the future balanced on the edge of that blade. Then she stood, slid the knife into the sheath at her belt, extended her hand toward the man who'd killed her sister. "Show me what you know about Cascade Protocol." Garrett took her hand, 4 fingers closing around 4. Calluses meeting calluses. The grip of 2 people who understood violence on a molecular level. "Welcome to the war, Cat." His tone was serious. "It's uglier than you imagine. I've been hunting you for 15 years, Maddox." She squeezed his hand hard enough to make bones grind. "I've already seen ugly. Not like this." He released her hand, moved to a corner of the mill where he'd cached supplies, pulled out files, hard drives, photographs, the accumulated intelligence of someone who'd been fighting shadows for 3 decades. The consortium isn't just a criminal organization. It's a parasite that's burrowed into every level of government: military, intelligence, law enforcement. He spread the evidence across a rusted workbench. "They don't want to destroy America. They want to perfect it, turn it into the most efficient authoritarian machine the world has ever seen." Kat studied the files. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, sorting information, building connections, seeing patterns emerge from chaos. This was what she'd been trained for, what 15 years of obsessive focus had made her exceptional at: analysis, pattern recognition, finding needles in haystacks made of other needles. "Victor Hollis," she said, pointing to a photograph. Distinguished man in his 60s, military uniform heavy with medals, face that projected authority and competence in equal measure. Former general, now works as a consultant for a dozen defense contractors. "My former commanding officer." Garrett's voice carried old pain. "He taught me everything: tactics, strategy, how to make the hard choices, how to live with them afterward." A pause. "He was the one who fed me the intelligence about Blackwood. Made it seem like we had 8 hours to stop a bioweapon deployment. Made me believe I was saving millions of lives. But you weren't." "No." The word came out flat, dead. "I was destroying the one thing that could have stopped them. But I didn't know that until years later. Until Hollis had used Blackwood to build his empire. Until the consortium had become so powerful that going after them meant accepting you'd probably die trying." Kat looked up from the files. "You've been fighting them for 30 years. Longer. Garrett pulled out a chair, lowered himself into it with the careful movements of someone whose body had been broken and rebuilt too many times. I joined the military when I was 18, believed in duty, honor, protecting the innocent, serving something bigger than myself. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Took me 20 years to realize I was serving the exact opposite. That every mission, every strike, every target we eliminated was just removing obstacles for people like Hollis, making the world safer for the consortium to operate. So you tried to expose them. Tried, failed, ended up in Cartwright camp for 6 months. His hand unconsciously moved to his ribs. They taught me what happens to people who threaten their interests. Taught me lessons I still feel every time it rains. Kat saw it then. The scars, the damage, the way he moved like every breath cost him something. This man had been broken, systematically, professionally, by people who understood exactly how to destroy a human being without killing them. And he'd survived anyway. After Cartwright, I ran, Garrett continued, built new identities, moved every few years, tried to stay ahead of them while gathering evidence, proof they couldn't bury or destroy. He gestured to the files. 30 years of work. 30 years of hiding and searching and hoping that someday, somehow, I'd find a way to bring them down. Why not go public release everything to the media? Because the consortium owns the media, owns the fact-checkers, owns the narrative. His voice was bitter. I tried that once, 12 years ago. Gave everything to 3 different journalists, major publications, Pulitzer winners, people I thought couldn't be bought. He met her eyes. They're all dead now. Suicides, car accidents, random muggings, and the story never broke. Every copy of the evidence disappeared, like it never existed. Kat understood. She'd seen enough over 15 years to know how power really worked, how truth became whatever the people in charge said it was, how inconvenient facts had a way of disappearing along with the people who spoke them. So what's changed, she asked. Why now? Why risk everything on Cascade Protocol? Because Cascade is different. Garrett stood, moved to a map he'd pinned to the wall. Red circles marked locations across the American heartland. They're not just eliminating individuals anymore. They're going after communities, entire ways of life, people who still remember what freedom actually means, who still know how to live without asking permission from bureaucrats in Washington. His finger traced from circle to circle. Montana militia groups, Idaho survivalists, Wyoming ranchers who've been fighting federal land grabs for generations, Alaskan homesteaders who live off the grid and like it that way. He turned to face her. The consortium sees these people as problems, obstacles to their vision of perfectly managed society, and Cascade Protocol is their final solution. 50 simultaneous strikes. Kat studied the map. That's coordinated terrorism on a massive scale. They'd need hundreds of operatives, millions in funding, logistical support from multiple agencies. They have all of that. Garrett pulled up more files. The operatives are already in place. Deep cover. Some of them have been embedded in these communities for years, earning trust, making friends, learning routines and vulnerabilities. His voice went hard. When Cascade launches, it'll be neighbors killing neighbors, brothers betraying brothers. The perfect trauma to justify any response the consortium wants. Kat felt sick, not the physical nausea of poison or disease, the existential sickness of recognizing evil that was patient, methodical, and absolutely committed to its vision. When, she asked. 6 months, maybe 8. Garrett met her eyes. We don't have much time, and we can't do this alone. The 9 hunters before me, the 3 who took your deal. Kat's mind was already working, calculating possibilities. Can we contact them? No. Garrett's voice was firm. I made them a promise. New lives, clean breaks, no coming back to fight old wars. I won't violate that. So it's just us. Just us. He smiled grimly. 2 broken people against the most powerful shadow organization in America. What could go wrong? Despite everything, despite the horror and grief and rage churning in her chest, Kat felt something unexpected. A laugh. Small, brief, but real. You have a hell of a sales pitch, Maddox. I've had 30 years to work on it. He extended his hand again. So what do you say? Can you work with the man who killed your sister? Kat looked at his hand, scarred, weathered. The hand of a man who'd killed her sister, who'd shattered her world and set her on a path of hate that had consumed 15 years of her life. The hand of the only person alive who might actually understand what she'd become. She took it. I don't forgive you, Maddox, but I'm listening. That's all I ask. He squeezed back. We leave at dawn. I have a safe house in Montana. Off-grid, no records. We can plan there. Train, get ready for what comes next. Montana, where her family had died 6 months ago, where her father and brothers had burned while she chased ghosts on the other side of the country. Kat felt the rage return. Good. She'd need it for what came next. Lead the way, she said. Garrett paused at the mill entrance. Rain hammered down beyond the shelter. The night was dark, moonless now, the kind of darkness where anything could hide. Kat, yeah, I really am sorry about Sarah. His voice was quiet. For what it's worth, I think about her, about all of them, every day. Kat stared at him. This man who'd destroyed her life, who was now asking her to trust him, to work with him, to become something other than the hate-driven weapon she'd spent 15 years becoming. It's not worth much, she said honestly, but it's something. They walked out into the rain together, hunter and hunted, killer and almost victim, two damaged people carrying more scars than flesh. Behind them, the lumber mill stood empty, silent except for the drip of water through broken places. And if the ghosts of 9 dead hunters watched from the shadows, if Sarah Sterling's spirit lingered in the spaces between moments, neither of them spoke of it. Some debts couldn't be paid. Some wounds couldn't heal. Some prices were eternal. But maybe, just maybe, they could keep others from paying the same cost. That would have to be enough. 2 months in the Montana wilderness changed things, not the landscape. The Bitterroot Mountains had stood for millennia, indifferent to human drama playing out in their shadow. Snow-capped peaks carved sharp lines against endless sky. Pine forests stretched toward horizons that swallowed cities and spat out silence. This was country that remembered when men were visitors, not conquerors. What changed was the space between Garrett Maddox and Kat Sterling. The safe house sat 15 miles from the nearest road, accessible only by a trail that disappeared under fresh snow every winter. Single-story structure built from local timber, designed to look abandoned from any angle that mattered. Solar panels hidden under camouflage netting. Water from a spring that had never appeared on any survey. Radio silence so deep you could hear your own heartbeat in the static. Perfect for people who needed to disappear. Inside, Kat adjusted her stance for the 40th time that morning. Feet shoulder-width apart, weight balanced, breathing controlled. Everything her 15 years of training had taught her about close-quarters combat. Garrett circled her like a wolf testing prey. 63 years old, but moving with the kind of efficiency that came from muscle memory written in scar tissue. His gray eyes tracked her shoulders, her hips reading intention before her body could execute. You're telegraphing, he said, voice calm, instructional. That shoulder drop before you strike gives me a full second to counter. I've killed 17 people with that technique, and I've killed more than that exploiting it. He moved without warning, not fast, just inevitable. His hand caught her wrist mid-strike, twisted with surgical precision, and suddenly Kat was on her back, staring at ceiling beams. She rolled, came up ready, attacked again. Same result, different angle. You're relying on speed, Garrett continued, offering her a hand up. She ignored it, rose on her own. Speed is good against normal opponents. Against someone trained to read body mechanics, it's a disadvantage. So what do I use instead? Deception. He reset to neutral stance. Make me think you're doing one thing, do another. Fight the way water flows, not the way hammers fall. They'd been doing this for weeks, every morning. 3 hours of hand-to-hand combat that left Kat bruised, frustrated, and grudgingly impressed. Garrett fought like someone who'd learned in places where losing meant dying. Every movement had purpose. Every technique had been tested against opponents who weren't training partners. She came at him again. This time she showed the shoulder drop, let him commit to the counter, then shifted at the last possible instant. Her elbow caught his ribs. Not hard enough to damage, hard enough to prove the point. Garrett smiled, first genuine expression of approval she'd seen. Better, you're learning. I've been learning my whole life. You've been learning to hunt. He moved to the water barrel, drank from a tin cup that had seen better decades. I'm teaching you to fight. There's a difference. The distinction mattered. Kat was beginning to understand that. Hunting meant tracking patience, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Fighting meant adapting, surviving, making do with imperfect moments because perfect ones didn't exist in combat. She'd spent 15 years as a hunter. Now she needed to become something else. Again, she said. They trained until noon. Then Kat took over the instruction. The laptop looked out of place in the rustic cabin, modern technology surrounded by hand-hewn logs and wood smoke. But the digital world was where Kat had learned to excel, where her generation had advantages that Garrett's tradecraft couldn't match. Encryption protocols have changed, she explained, fingers moving across keys with practiced speed. The methods you learned 15 years ago are readable by any decent signals intelligence now. We need to upgrade your security. Garrett watched over her shoulder, taking notes, asking questions. No ego about admitting what he didn't know. Another lesson in itself. She showed him modern communication systems, mesh networks, cryptocurrency, dead drops that existed purely in blockchain ledgers, ways to move information that didn't rely on infrastructure the consortium controlled. Your methods were good for their team, she said, but you've been thinking analog in a digital war. Guilty. Garrett studied the screen. After Cartwright, I stopped trusting anything electronic. Figured if it had a power cord, it could be compromised. It can. Kat pulled up a demonstration, but so can everything else. The trick isn't avoiding technology, it's understanding it well enough to use it against people who trust it too much. She walked him through techniques, how to spoof GPS locations, how to create false digital footprints that would lead pursuers in circles, how to weaponize the very surveillance systems designed to track them. The consortium thinks in databases, she explained. They trust their algorithms, their pattern recognition software, their predictive models. She smiled, predatory. That trust is a vulnerability. Feed the machine bad data and it makes bad predictions. You've been doing this to them. Not a question, recognition. For 8 years. Kat's fingers paused on the keys. Since they stopped paying me. Since I realized something was wrong with the narrative they'd fed me about you. I've been salting their intelligence with false leads, making them chase ghosts. She met his eyes. Why do you think it took me 15 years to find you? I'm better than that. Garrett understood. You were making sure they couldn't follow. I was making sure that when I finally caught up to you would be on my terms, not theirs. She pulled up files. Every breadcrumb I followed, I left 3 false trails behind it. Every pattern I identified, I corrupted in their databases. By the time I got to that lumber mill, the consortium's tracking systems were so poisoned, they couldn't have found you with a map and GPS coordinates. That's why you came alone. That's why I'm still breathing. And she closed the laptop. They've killed everyone who got too close. Everyone except me. Because I made myself invisible to their systems while staying visible to you. The afternoons settled into routine. Kat cooked simple meals from dried stores and canned goods. Garrett maintained weapons, the meditative work of someone who'd learned that equipment failure meant death. They ate in comfortable silence, the kind that came from shared purpose rather than forced companionship. As darkness fell, they took turns on watch. 4-hour shifts, old habits from old wars. Kat noticed Garrett never seemed to sleep deeply. He'd doze in the chair by the window, one hand always near his rifle. 63 years old and still living like the next bullet might arrive any second. She understood. She'd been living the same way since she was 20. Tell me about Hollis, she said one night during the dead hours before dawn. You served under him, trusted him. What changed? Garrett was quiet for a long moment. Outside wind moved through pine trees with sounds like whispered conversations. An owl called. Something small died in the darkness. I didn't see it at first, he said finally. Hollis was everything a commander should be. Tactical genius, took care of his people, made the hard calls without flinching. I wanted to be like him. His jaw tightened. Turns out, I got my wish. What do you mean, Blackwood wasn't the first operation where the intelligence was wrong. Wasn't even the 10th. Garrett stared out at the darkness. Looking back, I can see the pattern. Every mission Hollis sent me on every target I eliminated, it served the consortium's interests, removed their competitors, eliminated witnesses, cleared obstacles. You were his weapon. I was his scalpel. The distinction seemed important to him. Precise, clean, effective, and completely ignorant of what I was actually cutting. He turned to face her. That's what they do, Kat. They find good people. People who genuinely want to serve, to protect, to make the world safer, and they aim those people at targets that make the world worse. How did you figure it out? Cartwright Camp. His hand moved unconsciously to his ribs again. That tell he couldn't quite control. After Blackwood, I started asking questions. Why was the intelligence wrong? How did a bioweapon facility exist without anyone knowing? Who authorized the strike without proper verification? He laughed bitter as alkali water. Hollis told me to drop it. Told me intel failures happen. Collateral damage is part of war. Move on. But you didn't. I couldn't. Garrett's voice went quiet. I kept seeing their faces. The people in that facility. Sarah. All of them. Kept wondering if I'd just murdered 200 innocent people because I trusted orders without verification. So you investigated. So I committed career suicide. He stood, moved to the window. Found evidence. Communications between Hollis and consortium leadership. Financial transfers. Proof that Blackwood wasn't what I'd been told. His voice went hard. Proof that I'd been used. Kat felt cold settle in her chest. What did you do? I went to expose him. The correction came quickly. Proper channels, evidence, chain of command, everything by the book. Because I still believed the system worked. Still thought justice was possible if you just followed procedure. What happened? I woke up in Cartwright Camp. His voice went flat, emotionless. The tone of someone reciting facts that had happened to someone else. Hollis was there, told me I'd made a mistake, told me the evidence had been destroyed. My career was over, and the only reason I was still breathing was because he wanted to teach me a lesson about loyalty. Kat didn't ask what kind of lesson. The scars told that story. 6 months, Garrett continued. They broke bones, waterboarded me, electric shocks, stress positions, every technique in the manual and a few that weren't. He met her eyes in the window's reflection. But the worst part wasn't the physical torture. It was Hollis visiting me every week, sitting outside my cell, explaining that everything I'd suffered was my own fault. That if I just followed orders, trusted the plan, been a good soldier, none of this would have happened. How did you escape? I didn't. Garrett's reflection showed something close to a smile. They let me go. Hollis stood there and told me I had 2 choices. Work for the consortium willingly or spend the rest of my life running, knowing they'd kill anyone who helped me, anyone who got close, anyone who became a liability. And you chose to run. I chose to fight. The distinction was everything. Running implies retreat. What I've been doing for 30 years is guerrilla warfare. Hit and fade, gather intelligence, disrupt operations, make them pay for every inch of ground. His reflection's eyes were hard. They wanted a good soldier. They got a war. Silence filled the cabin, the weight of confessed history settling between them like snow on pine branches. My turn, Garrett said. Tell me about Sarah. Kat had been dreading this, wanting it, needing to speak her sister's name to someone who might actually understand the cost of losing her. She was the youngest, Kat began. 4 of us, 3 brothers, then Sarah and me. Dad raised us after Mom died, taught us to be self-reliant, to question authority, to prepare for when systems failed. She paused. He was right about that part. Montana compound. Montana freedom. The distinction mattered to her too. We weren't crazy survivalists stockpiling weapons for the apocalypse. We were people who understood that governments don't protect you. They control you. And the only real security comes from being able to take care of yourself. Your father sounds like a good man. He was. Kat's voice threatened to break. She reinforced it. Hard, fair, taught us to shoot before we could read. Taught us to think before we spoke. Taught us that family was the only thing that mattered because everything else could be taken away. Sarah wanted something different. Sarah wanted to heal people. Kat smiled at the memory. She'd patch up our scrapes. set broken bones when we fell out of trees, stay up all night with sick animals. Dad wanted her to be a field medic, practical skills for when society collapsed. But Sarah had bigger dreams. Research scientist. She wanted to cure diseases. Kat's hands clenched. Wanted to work in medical research, save lives on a scale that mattered. And she was smart enough to do it. Scholarships, test scores, everything lined up. Pause. Except money. So she took the job at Blackwood. Research position, good pay, benefits. They told her it was pharmaceutical development, cutting-edge medicine helping people. Kat's voice went hard. She sent money home every month, never missed a payment, told us about the work, the breakthroughs, the lives they were going to save. She didn't know what they really were. She figured it out. Kat met his eyes. That's what I didn't understand until you showed me those files. Sarah wasn't collateral damage. She discovered what Blackwood really was, what they were actually doing, and she was going to expose it. That's why Hollis needed her dead. That's why he aimed you at her. The anger was clean now, focused. He used you to kill the one person who could have stopped him. And then he used her death to aim me at you. Perfect weapon pointed at perfect scapegoat. 15 years of misdirection while the consortium built their empire. Garrett nodded slowly. Your father, your brothers. When did you figure out the Montana fire wasn't an accident? 6 months ago, but I didn't know for sure until you showed me the files. Kat's jaw tightened. I was in Nevada, following a lead on you. Got the call that there'd been a fire, electrical fault, old wiring. They all died in their sleep. She laughed, no humor in it. Dad was a master electrician. Our compound had the best wiring in 3 counties. But I was hunting you, so I didn't question it. You were doing what they wanted. I was being their weapon, just like you were. She turned away from the window. That's what eats at me, Maddox. Not that Sarah died, not that my family burned, but that I spent 15 years helping the people who killed them, doing exactly what they wanted while thinking I was getting justice. That's their specialty. Garrett's voice was soft. Making good people do evil things while believing they're heroes. They sat in silence after that. 2 people united by manipulation, by being used, by the terrible recognition that their greatest enemy wasn't each other. Never had been. The next morning, they trained harder. Kat showed Garrett no mercy, came at him with everything she'd learned, every technique, every trick, fighting like she was trying to purge 15 years of misdirected rage through controlled violence. He met her, matched her, pushed back when she pushed forward. And slowly, gradually, they stopped being teacher and student, started being equals. You're getting better, he said after she managed to put him on the ground. 3rd time that week. You're getting old, she replied. But there was respect in her voice now, recognition. Both things can be true. They worked through scenarios, close quarters, long range, multiple opponents, improvised weapons, all the situations they might face when Cascade Protocol launched, and they found themselves outnumbered, outgunned, and operating without backup. The cleaners, Garrett said during a break. Hollis's elite team, 4 operators, X-Delta, enhanced training. They'll be protecting him when we move against Crater Lake. Tell me about them. Best I've ever seen. No false modesty, just assessment. Each one could handle a normal tactical team solo. Together, they're a force multiplier that changes the math on any engagement. Weaknesses? They're good, not superhuman. Garrett pulled up files on his tablet, photographs, service records, psychological profiles. This one, Marcus Webb, team leader, brilliant tactician, but he's arrogant, believes in his own legend. That's exploitable. And the others? Jennifer Chen, sniper, patient, professional, will wait hours for the perfect shot, counter her by never being still, never giving her that perfect moment. Number 3, David Kowalski, demolitions expert, thinks in terms of explosives and structural failure. He'll try to trap you, funnel you into kill zones. Solution is to recognize his patterns, use them against him. And the 4th, Garrett's face went hard. Thomas Briggs, the one who killed your family. Well, Kat felt ice settle in her eyes. Tell me. Psychological operations specialist. Interrogation, torture, breaking people without leaving marks that lawyers can photograph. Garrett met her eyes. He's the one Hollis sends when he wants someone to suffer, when death isn't enough, when he wants to destroy everything someone is before finally letting them die. He'll be at Crater Lake. He'll be protecting Hollis personally, which means you'll see him, talk to him, hear him describe what he did to your father, your brothers. Garrett's voice was gentle, careful. And you'll need to stay focused anyway. Because if he gets in your head, if he triggers you the way he's designed to trigger people, we both die. I can handle it. Can you, Mom? Not a challenge. A question that needed answering. Kat, I've seen strong people break against interrogators like Briggs. Seen trained operators crack. Seen men who'd faced death 100 times fall apart because someone knew exactly what words would cut deepest. What are you saying? I'm saying we should practice. Garrett stood. Not physical combat, psychological. You need to face the worst things he might say. Hear them, process them, learn to function anyway. Kat understood, hated it, understood anyway. Do it, she said. Over the next 3 weeks, Garrett ran psychological conditioning, speaking calculated horrors in measured tones while Kat learned to function through the worst things Briggs might say. Each session she lasted longer, broke less, built calluses on her mind the way sparring had built them on her hands, until finally she could hear descriptions of her family's deaths and still maintain operational focus. You're ready, Garrett said. How do you know? Because you just did. He gestured to the scenario they'd been running. That was worse than anything Briggs will actually say. And you functioned, stayed operational. That's all we need. That night, Kat took first watch, sat by the window with rifle across her lap, watching darkness settle over Montana wilderness, thinking about the path that had led her here. 20 years old when Sarah died, 35 now, 15 years spent becoming a weapon, 2 months learning to be something else. Behind her, Garrett dozed in his chair, 63 years old and still fighting battles that should have killed him decades ago, still carrying weight that would break most people. Still moving forward because stopping meant giving up, and giving up meant everything he'd sacrificed had been for nothing. She understood him now, understood why he'd let her hunt him for 15 years, why he'd waited for her to be ready, why he'd turned 9 assassins into 3 allies and 6 graves. He'd been building an army, one soldier at a time, from the people the consortium sent to kill him. The thought should have been disturbing, should have felt like more manipulation, more being used. Instead, it felt like purpose. Can't sleep. Garrett's voice came from the darkness. Thinking. Dangerous habit. He moved to join her at the window. What about Crater Lake, the mission? What happens if we fail? We don't fail. Simple. Certain. How can you be sure? Because failure means 50 communities get hit, thousands dead, martial law, everything the founders warned against. He looked at her. So we don't fail. We can't afford to. That's not a plan, that's faith. Sometimes faith is all you have. Garrett's expression was serious. Besides, we have advantages. We know where they are. We know what they're planning. And they think you're still hunting me, that I'm isolated, alone running. So we have surprise. We have the one thing the consortium can't account for. He met her eyes. We have a weapon they created turning against them. A hunter who knows all their techniques because they taught her. A soldier who learned from their best because he was their best. 2 people against an organization. 2 people with nothing left to lose. The distinction mattered. That makes us the most dangerous thing in their world. Kat considered that, turned it over in her mind, found it true. When do we move? Soon. Garrett checked his watch. Intel says Hollis will be at Crater Lake in 72 hours, inspecting cascade preparations. If we're going to hit him, get the operational plans, shut this down before it launches. He trailed off. We do it then. We do it then. He offered his fist. Old gesture. Soldiers before battle. Kat bumped it. Outside, the Montana night stretched vast and cold and indifferent. Inside, 2 broken people prepared for war against the machine that had broken them. The odds were terrible. The enemy was entrenched. The cost of failure was unthinkable. They were going anyway. Because some things mattered more than survival. Some fights were worth dying for. And some debts could only be paid in blood and sacrifice, in the slim hope that maybe, just maybe, burning everything down would give others a chance to build something better. Dawn came cold and clear. They packed weapons, checked equipment, made final preparations for the journey to Oregon, to Crater Lake, to the place where everything would be decided. Garrett moved with careful precision. Every item in its place, every weapon checked and rechecked. 30 years of tradecraft made manifest in Pimpamest. Kat matched him, motion for motion, her 15 years meeting his 30. Youth meeting experience, creating something greater than either could manage alone. Ready? He asked. No, Kat smiled, but we're going anyway. That's the spirit. They walked out into morning light together, the safe house locked behind them, the wilderness spreading in all directions. And somewhere to the west, across hundreds of miles of American landscape, their enemy waited. The consortium thought they knew what was coming, thought they had accounted for every variable, thought their plan was perfect. They were wrong, because the weapon they'd created, the hunter they'd aimed at their greatest threat, had learned something in 2 months of Montana wilderness. She'd learned that some things were worth more than revenge, that justice demanded more than blood, that the only way to honor Sarah's memory was to make sure nobody else's sister died for someone else's empire. And she'd learned that she wasn't alone anymore. The war was coming. The cleaners were waiting. Hollis was planning. But Garrett Maddox and Kat Sterling were ready. And that was going to make all the difference. Crater Lake was beautiful in the way that graveyards were beautiful. Serene, untouched, holding secrets beneath still surfaces that reflected sky without revealing depth. The consortium facility sat 3 miles from the actual lake, hidden in old-growth forest that had never seen a tourist camera. From above, it looked like abandoned Forest Service infrastructure. Rusted equipment, collapsed outbuildings, the kind of decay that invited forgetting. From ground level, if you knew what to look for, you could see the truth. Security cameras disguised as tree knots, motion sensors hidden in rotting logs, perimeter defenses that would turn the forest into a killing field at the first sign of intrusion. Garrett Maddox studied it all through binoculars from a ridge half a mile distant. Dawn light painted the facility in shades of gold and shadow. Peaceful, lethal. 4 entry points, he murmured, all covered by overlapping fields of fire. Approach from the east, you're exposed for 200 yards. West side has better cover, but channels you into a natural funnel. North and south are mined. Beside him, Kat Sterling traced patterns in the dirt, drawing sight lines, calculating angles. Her 15 years of hunting experience translating terrain into tactical advantage. The drainage tunnel, she said, pointing to a spot on her sketch. Old runoff system from when this was actual Forest Service. Too small for most operators. But I can fit. It'll be monitored. Everything's monitored. She met his eyes. Question is whether they're watching it in real time or just recording for review. If it's recording, we have a window before anyone checks the footage. Garrett considered. Risky. Everything about this is risky. Kat folded the sketch. We're 2 people assaulting a hardened facility protected by the best operators the consortium has. Risk stopped being a consideration when we left Montana. She was right. Garrett knew it, had known it since they'd started planning this operation. You didn't attack an enemy like the consortium with safe plays. You attacked with calculated desperation and hoped your calculations were better than theirs. The drainage tunnel puts you inside their perimeter, he said slowly. But you'll be alone, separated. If things go wrong, then you extract without me. Kat's voice was firm. We've been over this. Mission priority is the data. Cascade protocol launch codes, target locations, operational timeline. That information is worth more than either of our lives. Kat, no, she turned to face him fully. Sarah died trying to stop them. My father, my brothers, they died because the consortium saw them as obstacles. I'm not letting their deaths be meaningless. If I have to die getting that data, that's a trade I'll make. Garrett saw himself in her. The same certainty, the same willingness to pay any price for a mission that mattered. It was noble and tragic and exactly the kind of thinking that had kept him alive and isolated for 30 years. "We go in together," he said finally. "Or we don't go at all. That's tactically unsound." "Probably, Mun." His expression was resolute. "But I didn't spend 2 months training you just to watch you die alone in a drainage tunnel. We're in this together. That means we fight together." Kat stared at him. Something shifted in her expression. Not softness, exactly, but recognition. Understanding that for the first time in 15 years, someone actually gave a damn whether she survived. "Together," she agreed. "But if I go down, you promise me you'll finish it. Get the data. Stop Cascade. Make them pay for Sarah. If you go down, I'm probably already dead." Garrett extended his hand. "But yes, I promise." They shook on it. A compact sealed in the shadow of coming violence. The approach took 4 hours. Moving slow, staying low, using every scrap of cover the forest provided. Garrett's tradecraft meeting Kat's modern understanding of electronic surveillance. They disabled 3 sensors, avoided 2 patrol routes, bypassed a pressure plate that would have triggered alarms all the way to Washington. The drainage tunnel was exactly where Kat's reconnaissance had indicated. Concrete pipe 3 feet in diameter, half filled with decades of accumulated debris. The kind of infrastructure nobody remembered existed until it failed catastrophically. Perfect for infiltration. Kat went first, Garrett followed, crawling through darkness and rot in the smell of things that had died in enclosed spaces. His 63-year-old body protested every movement. Ribs that had been broken in Cartwright Camp ached. Lungs that had been damaged by waterboarding burned. But he pushed through because stopping meant failing, and failing meant Cascade launched and thousands died. The tunnel opened into a sub-basement. Old storage area. Equipment from the 1970s rusting in corners. No cameras. No motion sensors. Just forgotten space beneath a facility built on top of older bones. They emerged into darkness. Kat's hand found Garrett's shoulder. Silent communication. He squeezed once. Acknowledged. Above them, the consortium facility hummed with purposeful activity. Voices, footsteps, the white noise of an organization confident in its security. That confidence was about to cost them. Garrett moved through the sub-basement like smoke through screens. Kat matched him. 2 shadows where there should have been light. They reached a maintenance shaft. Climbed. Emerged 1 level up in a utility corridor. Still no alarms. Still no contact. Too easy, Garrett's instincts screamed. 30 years of survival sense recognizing a trap before his conscious mind could articulate why. He held up a fist. Stop. Kat froze. Questioned with her eyes. Garrett pointed to the ceiling. Kat looked. Saw it. Fiber optic camera disguised as conduit junction. State of the art. Barely visible. Watching the corridor they'd been about to enter. They pulled back. Reassessed. They've upgraded security, Kat whispered. Barely audible even inches away. Garrett nodded, pulled out his tablet, the one Kat had helped him configure with modern counter-surveillance tools. If they could hack the camera feed loop the footage, they'd have a window. But hacking took time, and time was the one resource they couldn't afford. A door opened down the corridor. Footsteps approached. 2 guards by the sound. Casual conversation about a basketball game. Normal facilities security doing routine rounds. Garrett and Kat pressed into a recessed alcove. Barely enough space for both of them. They could smell each other's sweat, feel each other's breathing. 2 people compressed into a space meant for one. The guards passed within 3 feet, never looked in their direction. Why would they? Nobody had breached the facility in its entire operational history, first time for everything. After the guards moved on, Garrett worked quickly. Connected his tablet to the camera's network junction. Kat kept watch, her hand on her suppressed pistol. Ready. Got it, Garrett murmured. The camera feed looped. 30 seconds of empty corridor playing on repeat. They had maybe 5 minutes before someone noticed the timestamp inconsistency. They moved. The facility's layout matched the plans Garrett had stolen months ago. Server room 2 levels up. That's where the Cascade data would be stored. Encrypted, protected, but accessible if you knew what you were looking for. They reached the stairwell, climbed, every step measured, every sound controlled. The kind of movement that came from lives spent in places where noise meant death. Second level, the corridor here was cleaner, more modern. This was active operational space. Offices, conference rooms, the places where the consortium planned atrocities in air-conditioned comfort. Garrett checked his watch. Victor Hollis was scheduled to arrive in 30 minutes. Security would tighten. Windows of opportunity would close. They needed the data and extraction before then. The server room door was locked. Biometric scanner. Keypad. The kind of security that would take hours to bypass conventionally. Kat pulled out a device that looked like a smartphone. Cloned access card, she explained. Pulled the credentials from their network when I poisoned their databases 8 years ago. Should work unless they've rotated security protocols. She pressed it to the scanner. Green light. Lock disengaged. They haven't rotated, Garrett observed. Arrogance. Kat pushed the door open. They think their network security is impenetrable. Why change what isn't broken? Remind me to thank them later. The server room was cold, rows of black metal equipment humming with the white noise of processing power. Somewhere in this room, in ones and zeros and encrypted files, lived the complete plan for Cascade Protocol. 50 targets, thousands of lives. The blueprint for turning America into the consortium's vision of perfect authoritarian control. Garrett moved to a terminal, started the extraction process. Kat covered the door. How long, she asked. 2 minutes, maybe 3. His fingers flew across keys. Encryption is tougher than I expected. Need to crack it before we can copy. Work faster. Working as fast as physics allows. 1 minute passed. The data began transferring. Terabytes of operational plans, personnel rosters, timeline specifications. Everything they needed to stop Cascade and expose the consortium. 90 seconds. The progress bar crawled across the screen with agonizing slowness. Then the alarms began, not in the server room. Somewhere else in the facility, distant but growing louder, the sound of security protocols activating, lockdown procedures engaging. They know we're here, Kat said. Not necessarily. Garrett kept working. Could be routine drill, could be unrelated security event, could be. The door exploded inward, not metaphorically, actually exploded, shape charge precisely placed. The kind of breach that cleared rooms and killed everyone inside. Except Garrett and Kat had moved the instant they heard footsteps approaching, had thrown themselves behind server racks, had survived the blast through a combination of experience and desperate luck. Through the smoke and ringing ears, 4 figures entered. The cleaners, Victor Hollis's elite team. Marcus Webb led them, 6'2", built like violence distilled into human form. Behind him, Jennifer Chen, with her sniper rifle configured for close quarters. David Kowalski carrying enough explosives to level the building. And Thomas Briggs, the psychological operations specialist, the one who'd killed Kat's family. Maddox, Webb's voice was calm, professional. Been a while. Garrett rose slowly, hands visible, no weapon drawn, yet. Marcus, still doing Hollis's dirty work, I see. Pays well. Webb smiled. Better than being a fugitive, certainly. Is that what you tell yourself, that it's about money? It's about understanding how the world actually works. Webb gestured to his team. They fanned out, professional spacing, covering angles. The consortium doesn't fight reality, Garrett. It shapes reality. That's power, real power. And you could have been part of it. I'd rather be right than powerful. And that's why you lost. Webb's smile widened. That idealism, that belief that being right matters, it doesn't. What matters is who controls the narrative, who sets policy, who decides what truth is. He paused. The consortium decides. Everyone else just lives with the consequences. During this exchange, Garrett tracked positions. Chen had line of sight from the doorway. Kowalski was moving to flank. And Briggs was focused on Kat, reading her, analyzing, looking for the psychological pressure points that would make her break. Catherine Sterling, Briggs said. His voice was soft, cultured, the kind of voice that narrated nature documentaries. I've been looking forward to meeting you. Kat said nothing, kept her breathing controlled, remembered Garrett's training. Don't engage, don't react, don't give them ammunition. Your father was a strong man, Briggs continued, held out for almost 3 hours before he started begging. Told me where to find each of your brothers. Thought if he cooperated, I'd make it quick for them. The smile was gentle, compassionate, monstrous. I didn't. Kat's hand tightened on her pistol. Garrett saw it, saw her control wavering. Kat, he said quietly, remember Montana, remember the training. He's doing what he's designed to do. Listen to your partner, Briggs said. He knows how this works, how I work. 6 months ago, when your brother Michael was burning alive, he called for you, kept saying your name, wondering why you weren't there to save him. Briggs, Garrett's voice cut through the psychological assault. You want to play games, play with me. Leave her alone. But she's so much more interesting. Briggs took a step closer to Kat. 15 years hunting the wrong man, 15 years being the consortium's perfect weapon, and all the while we were killing everyone she loved, using her crusade against you to keep her distracted while we eliminated her family, eliminated witnesses, built our empire on the bodies of people she was supposed to protect. Kat's breathing accelerated. Garrett could see her losing the battle. Psychological warfare was different when the operator could cite specific truths, specific deaths, when every word landed because every word was real. Look at me, Garrett said, commanding, pulling her focus. Kat, look at me. Her eyes found his, desperate, drowning. You survived this in Montana, he continued. You can survive it now. He's trying to make you react, make you emotional, make you sloppy. Don't give him that. But he killed, I know what he killed. Garrett held her gaze. And we'll make him pay, but not by losing control. We make him pay by winning, by getting that data, by stopping Cascade, by making sure no one else's family burns while they're out hunting ghosts. Something steadied in Kat's eyes, not calm, but control, the kind of iron will that had kept her hunting for 15 years. Redirected now, focused. Good speech, Webb said, touching, but ultimately pointless. You're surrounded, outgunned, in a facility about to go into complete lockdown. Even if you fight your way out of this room, you'll never escape the building. Maybe. Garrett's hand moved slowly toward his weapon. But we'll take the data with us, and that's all that matters. The data is encrypted, Webb gestured to the terminal. Even if you copied it, you'll never crack the encryption. Consortium security protocols are... The terminal beeped. Transfer complete. Garrett's expression didn't change. Apparently not as good as you thought. Webb's face darkened. Kill them. What happened next took 3 seconds and felt like eternity. Kat moved first, not toward Briggs, toward the server rack nearest to Kowalski. The demolitions expert would have placed charges throughout the room. Backup plan to destroy evidence if extraction failed. Standard protocol. She grabbed the nearest charge, armed it, threw it at Chen's position. The sniper dove for cover. Her shot went wide. Garrett was already moving. Drew his pistol, fired toward Webb. The cleaner leader deflected behind equipment. Professional, experienced, but now committed to a position. Kowalski tried to trigger his remote detonator. Blow the charges, bring the whole room down. But Kat was on him, hand to hand, the techniques Garrett had drilled into her over 2 months. Fighting like water instead of hammers. She wasn't trying to beat him, just delay him. Keep him from triggering the detonator long enough for the charge she'd thrown exploded. Not a full detonation, just a flash bang, enough to disorient, to create chaos. Garrett used the distraction, moved on Webb, 63 years old, facing a man 15 years younger. Stronger, faster, everything physical advantage belonged to Webb. But Garrett had taught Webb everything the man knew, which meant he knew every technique, every counter, every habit ingrained in muscle memory. And he knew Webb's weakness, arrogance. They collided, traded blows. Teacher and former student locked in combat that was both brutal and precise. Webb came in high with a textbook Delta Force assault pattern. The same pattern Garrett had taught him 20 years ago. Feint left strike right follow with grapple. Garrett didn't block the feint, moved inside it. Elbow to Webb's solar plexus. Not hard enough to stop him. Hard enough to disrupt breathing. Webb grunted, adapted. His hand shot out, grabbed Garrett's arm, twisted with superior strength. At 38, Webb was faster, younger, his body not yet broken by decades of warfare. He slammed Garrett into a server rack. Metal creaked. Sparks flew from damaged equipment. Garrett's ribs screamed. Old breaks from Cartwright. Old damage that never fully healed. Everything hurt. He ignored the pain. Had been ignoring pain for 3 decades. Instead, he grabbed a loose cable, heavy gauge, still connected to power, wrapped it around Webb's throat. Not to kill, to control. Webb bucked, threw Garrett off with raw strength. Both men crashed to the floor, rose, circled in the confined space between equipment racks. "You taught me everything," Webb gasped, blood on his lip where Garrett had landed a strike. "I know." Garrett watched his opponent's footwork, every step, every weight shift. "That's why I know you favor your left knee, the one you injured in Kandahar, the one that never quite healed right." Webb's eyes widened, understanding coming too late. Garrett didn't attack the knee directly. Too obvious. Webb would see it coming. Instead, he forced lateral movement, made Webb pivot, put continuous pressure on the joint, made him compensate. The knee buckled, just half a second, the briefest hesitation in Webb's stance. Garrett was already moving. Inside Webb's guard. 2 shots, center mass. The Mozambique drill executed with textbook precision. Webb went down, body armor kept him alive. But cracked ribs and internal trauma put him out of the fight. Garrett stood over his former student, breathing hard. 63 years and feeling every one of them. "You were right about one thing. I did teach you everything." He holstered his pistol. "Except how to beat me." Across the room, Kat had gotten the detonator away from Kowalski, but Briggs was moving on her position. The psychological warfare hadn't worked. Time for direct violence. "Kat." Garrett threw her his backup pistol. She caught it, turned, fired. Briggs was fast, dropped low. The round passed where his head had been a fraction of a second earlier. He came up with a knife, the same weapon he'd used on Kat's family, moving with practiced efficiency toward her throat. No hesitation, no mercy. Kat remembered Montana, remembered the training, remembered Garrett's words about fighting like water, not like hammers. She didn't try to stop the knife. She redirected it, used Briggs's momentum against him. Let him commit to the strike, then shifted her weight. His blade cut air where she'd been. Then she shot him in the spine. Briggs went down hard. The knife clattered from nerveless fingers. He tried to move. Couldn't. Paralysis spreading from the bullet wound. Not dead, worse than dead, aware of everything, able to feel pain, unable to move. "That's for my father," Kat said quietly. She moved closer, pressed the barrel to his head. "For Michael, for David, for Marcus," her finger tightened on the trigger. "And for Sarah." "Kat," Garrett's voice, gentle, understanding. "Not like this. He deserves to die." "Yes," Garrett moved beside her, "but you deserve better than becoming him, than killing a paralyzed man in cold blood, than giving the consortium what they want." What do they want? To prove we're no different than them, that everyone becomes monsters eventually, that ideals don't matter because everyone breaks in the end. He put his hand on her shoulder. "Don't give them that. Don't prove them right." Kat's hands shook. The pistol wavered. 15 years of hate focused on the trigger pull that would end Briggs's life. Behind them, Chen and Kowalski had retreated, smart operators who knew when to pull back. Regroup, wait for reinforcements that were surely coming. The window was closing, and then Kat lowered the weapon. "He stands trial," she said, voice steady despite the rage burning in her chest. "Everyone knows what he did, what they all did. Public record, public justice." "Agreed, boss." Garrett moved to secure Briggs, zip ties, professional restraint. "Though he won't be standing much." "Data," Kat asked. Garrett checked the terminal. "Got it all. Complete cascade protocol, target locations, personnel, timeline, everything." "Then we go." They moved toward the door, Garrett carrying the extracted data on a portable drive, Kat covering their 6, 2 people who'd entered as hunter and hunted, leaving as something else entirely. Partners. The facility was in full lockdown now, alarms screaming, security teams mobilizing. Every exit covered, except one. "The drainage tunnel," Garrett said. "They'll have found it by now." "Probably," but it's our only chance. They fought their way back, not through overwhelming force, through precision, through knowing when to engage and when to avoid, through 30 years of Garrett's experience and 15 years of Kat's determination. Bodies behind them, alarms ahead, the drainage tunnel exactly where they'd left it, with 6 security operators waiting in ambush. Predictable, the security team leader said. Weapon trained on them. Only way out. We knew you'd come back. Garrett looked at Kat. Kat looked at Garrett. Some communication passed between them, the kind that didn't need words. Then Garrett pulled something from his pack. Kowalski's detonator, the one Kat had taken during their fight. You know what this is? He asked the security team. Their expressions answered. Your demolitions expert placed charges throughout the server room, Garrett continued. His thumb rested on the trigger. Insurance policy. Destroy evidence if extraction failed. Standard protocol. He held up the detonator. Except we have the detonator now, and if you don't let us walk out of here, I trigger it. Bring down 3 floors. Kill everyone above us, including whatever VIPs are currently in the command center. You're bluffing. Garrett's expression was utterly calm. Maybe. Want to bet your life on it? Silence. The security team calculating odds. Evaluating commitment. Looking at a 63-year-old man who'd survived 30 years of warfare and wondering if he was crazy enough to do it. The answer was in his eyes. They stepped aside. Garrett and Kat moved through the drainage tunnel, fast as they could manage. Behind them they heard shouting. Orders being given. The security team deciding too late that maybe Garrett had been bluffing after all. Maybe he had been, maybe not. They emerged into forest, ran, put distance between themselves and the facility, made it a quarter mile before the facility's rapid response team started pursuit. But a quarter mile in old-growth forest with 2 operators who knew how to move unseen was enough. They disappeared into the Pacific Northwest wilderness, became ghosts, exactly what Garrett had been for 30 years. Except this time he wasn't alone. 3 weeks later, safe house in Idaho, different location, same purpose, hiding until the world caught up. Kat sat at the computer, working through the final decryption layers on the Crater Lake data. Days of work, complex algorithms, but she was close now. Then she found it. Garrett, her voice was hollow. You need to see this. He moved to the screen, read the files, medical research protocols, viral countermeasure development, test population data from rural Alaska, and communications. Hollis to consortium leadership. Subject Blackwood termination. The words burned into his consciousness. We need to destroy the cure before it reaches distribution. Eliminate Dr. Sterling. She's discovered our deployment in the Alaska test sites. Recommend airstrike using Maddox. He'll follow orders without verification. Perfect deniability. Garrett's hands shook. 30 years. 30 years believing he'd stopped a bioweapon. That his choice, however terrible, had saved millions. I didn't stop an attack, he whispered. I enabled one. Kat's face was stone. Sarah wasn't collateral damage. She was the target. She discovered Hollis had already deployed the plague in test populations, was developing the cure to sell back to the government for billions. She was going to expose everything. So Hollis used me to kill her. Garrett's voice broke. Used me to destroy the one thing that could have saved thousands, and made me think I was the hero. The weight of it crashed down. Every person who died from the plague after Blackwood. Every life that could have been saved by the cure Sarah was developing. All of it on his hands. Not because he was evil, because he'd been good, had trusted orders, had believed in the mission. How many, he asked, how many died because I destroyed the cure? Kat checked the files. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. Deployment affected 17 Alaska villages. Estimated casualties. She paused. 4,312. 4,000, plus Sarah, plus the 200 at Blackwood. Garrett had spent 30 years carrying the weight of 200 deaths. Learning he'd actually caused 4,000 felt like drowning in concrete. I was their weapon, he said, just like you were. Just like everyone they touch becomes. We don't fight monsters. We become them without realizing it. No, Kat's voice was firm. She grabbed his shoulders, made him look at her. Monsters don't care about the damage they cause. Don't carry guilt. Don't spend 30 years trying to stop the people who use them. She turned the screen toward him. We were weapons, but we chose to break, to turn against our makers. That's what makes us different. Does it? Garrett stared at his hands, hands that had pulled the trigger on Blackwood. 4,000 people. Sarah, all dead because I followed orders. All dead because Hollis gave those orders. Kat's grip tightened. You were a soldier doing what soldiers do. He was a monster doing what monsters do. Don't take his guilt onto your shoulders. But I carried it out. And now you'll make it right. She pulled up more files. Target locations for Cascade Protocol. 50 communities marked for destruction. Conservative estimate 30,000 casualties. You can't save the 4,000, but you can save the 30,000. Garrett met her eyes, saw not forgiveness, not absolution, but something better. Purpose. Then we stop Cascade, he said, whatever it takes. Whatever it takes, Kat agreed. The revelation hung between them, heavier than any weight they'd carried before. But shared weight was bearable weight, and they'd learned to carry together. Kat began uploading the data, not to news organizations, not to government agencies. The consortium owned those. To everywhere. WikiLeaks, distributed networks, blockchain storage that couldn't be deleted. Torrent sites, every corner of the internet that the consortium couldn't control all at once. Cascade Protocol, complete details, target locations, personnel rosters, financial transactions, the cure Sarah had been developing, the plague Hollis had deployed. Everything. Within hours, it was everywhere. Within days, federal investigations had begun. Within weeks, indictments were filed. Victor Hollis arrested at his home. Marcus Webb dying in a hospital bed from complications of his injuries. Jennifer Chen and David Kowalski in custody. Thomas Briggs in a maximum security medical facility paralyzed from the neck down and facing 47 counts of murder. The consortium's leadership exposed. Their operations disrupted. Their perfect plan destroyed before it could launch. Not dead. Organizations like that didn't die, but wounded, crippled, set back years, maybe decades. Enough time for others to prepare, to resist, to remember what freedom actually meant. Garrett watched the news coverage from the safe house window, saw his name cleared, saw the truth about Blackwood revealed, saw Sarah Sterling identified as the whistleblower who tried to stop the consortium 15 years ago. Before the sunset conversation they'd planned, before they could allow themselves to rest, they made one stop. The Sterling family plot. 4 graves on a Montana hillside overlooking the valley where they'd lived and died. Father, 3 brothers, and one more Kat had added after the truth came out. Sarah Sterling, research scientist, age 22. She tried to save them. Kat stood before her sister's grave, first time since the headstone had been placed. Garrett waited several yards back, giving her space. I'm sorry, Kat said quietly. Wind moved through the pines, carrying her words away. 15 years I spent hunting the wrong person. 15 years I could have been hunting the people who actually killed you, who used your death to aim me at Garrett while they built their empire. The Montana sky stretched vast and blue overhead, indifferent to human grief. But I found the truth eventually, exposed them, stopped Cascade, saved the 30,000 people you were trying to save when Hollis killed you. She touched the headstone, cold granite under her fingertips. It doesn't bring you back, doesn't undo what I did wrong. But maybe it means something. Maybe it makes your death count for something. Behind her, Garrett approached slowly, stopped beside her, 2 people united by tragedy, by being used, by the long road back from darkness. I'm sorry too, Sarah, he said to the grave. His voice was steady, not asking forgiveness because forgiveness wasn't his to claim, just stating truth. I pulled the trigger, followed orders without verification, destroyed the cure you were developing, enabled the deaths of 4,000 people who could have been saved. His jaw tightened. I can't undo it. Can't bring you back. But I promise you this, I'll spend whatever time I have left making sure no one else's sister dies because soldiers followed orders without asking questions. They stood in silence. 3 people, 2 alive, 1 dead, united by tragedy and the slow work of making meaning from loss. She would have liked you, Kat said finally. Sarah, I mean. She always believed people could change, could be better than their worst moments. A pause. I think she'd be glad we're working together, glad something good came from all this bad. I hope you're right, Garrett placed a hand on the headstone. I hope wherever she is, she knows her death wasn't meaningless, that it led to Cascade being stopped, to the consortium being exposed, to 30,000 people who live because she tried to do the right thing. They turned from the grave, walked back toward the rebuilt cabin Kat had constructed on the ruins of her family's compound. Behind them, the headstone stood silent against the Montana sky, a memorial to a young woman who tried to save lives and paid with her own. And ahead of them, the work continued, because that's what you did for the dead. You lived for them, fought for them, made their sacrifices mean something by refusing to let the world stay broken. The Montana sunset painted the sky in colors that had no names when they finally sat on the rebuilt porch, beautiful and terrible and honest in ways that human language couldn't capture. What do we do after, Kat asked? After the trials? After the consortium is dismantled as much as it can be? After everything? Garrett was quiet for a long moment. What do you want to do? I don't know. Kat considered. I've spent 15 years hunting you, 2 months fighting beside you. I don't know who I am without an enemy to chase. Then we find out together. Garrett met her eyes. The consortium isn't the only predator out there. Not the only people who need stopping. World is full of Thomas Briggs, full of operations like Cascade waiting to launch. You want to keep fighting. I want to make sure what happened to Sarah never happens to anyone else's sister. He paused. And I could use a partner, someone I trust, someone who understands the cause of the choices we make. Kat extended her hand. Garrett took it. They stood there on the Montana hillside as darkness gathered. 2 people who'd spent years trying to kill each other, who'd become something else through violence and necessity and the recognition that some fights were bigger than personal grudges. You know, Kat said thoughtfully, I spent 15 years convinced you were a monster. And now I know you're just a man who's been at war too long. She squeezed his hand. Like me. Is that better or worse? It's honest. She turned to face him fully. 15 years ago, I swore 9 hunters lay behind me, and you'd be the 10th. I remember. The ghost of a smile crossed Garrett's weathered face. I told you 9 were dead. You'd be next. You were right. Kat's voice was quiet but certain. The hunter I was is dead. Dead in that lumber mill, in Montana, in Crater Lake. Pause. But the woman I've become, she's standing beside you. Is that forgiveness? No. Kat met his eyes. Forgiveness means forgetting. I'll never forget Sarah. Never forget what you did, what I did, what we both became in service to people who used us. Her grip tightened. But holding on to hate is poison, and I'm done being poisoned. Garrett nodded, understanding in the set of his shoulders. So what now? Now we remember. Kat gestured to the valley spreading below them. We remember Sarah, my father, my brothers, everyone who died because the consortium saw them as obstacles instead of people. We remember them by making sure their deaths meant something. And how do we do that? By being better than we were. Kat's expression was resolute. By choosing justice over revenge. By fighting for people instead of against enemies. By being the kind of soldiers Sarah would have been proud to know. That's a tall order. We've got time. She released his hand, pulled out her phone. Encrypted messages waited, reports of other operations, other threats, other places where people like Hollis operated in shadows. The consortium is wounded but not dead. They'll reorganize, rebuild, come back stronger. Let them. Garrett's voice carried quiet certainty. They'll find we've reorganized too. That night they received the first message. Encrypted, routed through networks so complex the consortium would need months to trace it. 3 names. 3 of the assassins who'd taken Garrett's deal years ago. Marcus Webb's former teammate, Jennifer Chen's mentor, David Kowalski's closest friend. All alive, all watching, all waiting for the chance to do what Kat had done. Turn their weapons against the people who'd forged them. "We're not alone," Kat said. "We never were." Garrett began drafting responses. Careful, encrypted, building networks in shadow. 9 hunters came for me. 3 chose to live. Those 3 have been building their own networks, gathering others. People the consortium tried to use and failed to break. An army. A resistance. The distinction mattered to him. People who understand what we're fighting for, what we're fighting against, who've paid the price and decided that price meant something. Over the following weeks, the network grew. Former consortium assets, whistleblowers, operators who'd seen too much and couldn't stay silent anymore. Each one vetted, each one tested, each one choosing to stand against the machine that had tried to use them. They called themselves the Nine, in memory of the hunters who'd come before, in recognition that some bodies you left behind were the old versions of yourself. Garrett led the tactical operations. Kat handled intelligence and recruitment. Together, they built something the consortium had never anticipated, an organization that learned from its enemies, that turned their own techniques against them, that understood how shadow games were played because they'd been playing them for decades. 6 months after Crater Lake, they disrupted a consortium human trafficking network operating out of Seattle. 9 months after they exposed a black site detention facility in Nevada. A year after they prevented a false flag attack that would have justified another foreign war. Each operation precise, each strike targeted, each victory measured not in body counts, but in lives saved, in truth revealed, in the slow grinding work of making the world marginally less terrible. It wasn't glamorous, wasn't the kind of war that made headlines or earned medals, but it was the war that mattered. The one fought in shadows by people who'd learned that darkness was where real evil lived. And maybe, just maybe, where real heroism was forged. 2 years after that lumber mill confrontation, Garrett and Kat sat on the Montana hillside again, watching another sunset paint the sky in impossible colors. "New mission brief just came in," Kat said, checking her encrypted phone. "Consortium remnants reorganizing in the Pacific Northwest, planning something big. How many operators? Unknown, but the intelligence suggests significant resources." Garrett's expression was thoughtful. At 65, he moved slower than he once had, the years and injuries accumulating, but his mind was sharp as ever. "When do we move?" "Tomorrow." Kat met his eyes. Together. Always together. They stood, walked back toward the cabin to plan their next operation, the next battle in a war that had no end, only the choice to keep fighting, to keep trying, to keep believing that individual actions mattered in the face of institutional evil. The Montana sunset faded. Stars emerged, the ancient light of dead suns reaching across impossible distances to touch the living. Garrett and Kat moved through the gathering darkness, 2 people who'd learned that some wounds never healed, some debts never got paid, some costs were eternal, but carrying those costs together made them bearable. And tomorrow there would be new battles, new enemies, new chances to choose justice over revenge, to fight for people instead of against them, to be better than the world tried to make them. Tomorrow. But tonight they rested, remembered, and honored the dead by refusing to become like the people who'd killed them. 9 bodies lay behind them, the bodies of who they used to be, and ahead the work of becoming who they needed to be continued, one mission at a time, one choice at a time, one small victory against the darkness at a time. It wasn't much, but it was everything.